At 60 years old, Martina McBride has built a career defined by honesty, strength, and songs that give voice to those who need it most. She has never been one to shy away from speaking her truth. Yet, when it comes to George Strait, the man known around the world as the King of Country, Martina has remained nearly silent. For decades, their relationship has been framed only by music, polite words, and the glow of shared stages. But now, in a rare and candid moment, Martina hints at something far deeper, an untold side of their bond that fans never imagined. Her words suggest that behind the polished performances and the carefully managed public images lies a story filled with unspoken truths, hidden lessons, and perhaps even a secret that could rewrite what we thought we knew about both of them. If revealed, this connection might not just reshape their legacies, but also change the very way we understand the heart of country music itself. Long before Martina McBride stood beneath arena lights, before her voice soared across airwaves and award stages, her story began in Sharon, Kansas, a tiny town of barely 200 people. Life there was simple, rooted in routine, tradition, and the steady rhythm of farm life. Martina Maria Schiff was born on July 29, 1966, the youngest of 4 children, and her earliest memories were filled with the smell of wheat fields, the sound of dairy cows, and the hum of tractors across the plains. Her parents, Darrell and Jean Schiff, instilled in her the values of hard work and humility, lessons that would become the quiet backbone of her music career. But Sharon gave her something even more important than grit. It gave her music. Her father, Darrell, wasn't just a farmer. He led a local country band called the Shifters. In community halls, church socials, and county fairs, Martina learned what it meant to perform, not from the polished glow of television, but from the laughter, chatter, and clinking glasses of her neighbors. By 7, she was already singing alongside her father's band, shy at first, then increasingly bold. Standing on makeshift stages, staring out at familiar faces, she found her voice not just as a singer, but as a storyteller. Music filled the Schiff home. Records by Loretta Lynn, Tammy Wynette, and Patsy Cline echoed through the walls, alongside George Jones and Merle Haggard. Yet Martina wasn't limited to country. She absorbed the harmonies of pop and the boldness of rock, shaping her into a versatile performer. Even as a child, she noticed the power of a song to silence a room, to command attention. Every fairground performance was more than practice. It was a rehearsal for the life she was destined to live. By high school, Martina was playing keyboard, singing harmonies, and entering talent contests. Small-town Kansas became her first audience, and it shaped her into a performer who never forgot the importance of connection. Unlike many aspiring singers, she wasn't chasing fame yet. She was learning the craft of making people feel something. Her family's farm required endless labor, but those evenings spent playing music with her father gave her purpose. Her leap from Kansas to a broader stage didn't happen overnight. In her late teens, she began experimenting with new sounds. Joining a local rock band, she played clubs in Wichita, testing the edges of her style. The grit of rock sharpened her stage presence, but deep down, her heart remained tied to country's storytelling tradition. It was during this period that she met John McBride, a driven sound engineer whose technical skill matched her passion. Together, they dreamed bigger than Sharon ever could. Their marriage wasn't just personal, it became the cornerstone of her professional life. By 1989, Martina and John took the biggest gamble of their lives. They packed up, left Kansas behind, and set their sights on Nashville, the city where dreams were either made or broken. For Martina, the farm girl with a voice shaped by Kansas fields and community dances, This was her chance to turn hometown talent into a career that would one day make her one of country music's most powerful voices. In 1989, Martina McBride and her husband John packed their lives into a car and headed for Nashville, Tennessee. For Martina, it was a leap of faith, a chance to test whether the girl from Sharon, Kansas, could stand among the greatest voices in country music. Nashville was unforgiving to newcomers, a city filled with dreamers, every bar and every corner echoing with talent. Martina quickly learned that success in Music City required more than a powerful voice. It demanded connections, timing, and relentless perseverance. The early years were difficult. While John found steady work as a sound engineer, Martina struggled to make her mark. She took odd jobs to help keep them afloat, and one of those jobs was selling merchandise at Garth Brooks' concerts. It may not have seemed glamorous, but in truth, it was a backstage education. Watching Garth night after night, she studied how he worked a stage, how he connected with fans, and how professionalism mattered as much as performance. These lessons stayed with her long after the shirts were folded and sold. Still, Martina refused to give up her own dream. She spent her nights writing, rehearsing, and performing whenever she could. Slowly but surely, she began to catch the attention of industry insiders. Her break came when she met Joe Galante of RCA Records. After hearing her sing, he recognized a voice that could cut through the crowded world of Nashville. In 1991, she signed with RCA, a moment that would change her life forever. With a record deal in hand, Martina's official career began. Her debut single, The Time Has Come, released in 1992, didn't soar to the top of the charts, but it was a crucial first step. It proved that she belonged, that she had earned her place in the industry. From there, she built steadily, with each new song adding to her reputation as a powerhouse vocalist. Nashville began to whisper her name with respect, recognizing that she wasn't just another hopeful. She was a rising star with the ability to move audiences. Martina's early years in Nashville were more than a struggle for survival. They were the foundation of the artist she would become. Every job, every sleepless night, every performance in a smoky bar forged her resilience. And when her voice finally began to reach beyond the city limits, it carried with it the story of a small-town girl who refused to let obstacles define her. Nashville had tested her, but it had also sharpened her into the artist who would one day share the stage with the king of country himself. Before Martina McBride ever stood alongside him, George Strait had already cemented himself as the embodiment of country music tradition. Born in Poteet, Texas in 1952, Strait built his career not through gimmicks or trends, but through a steady dedication to the roots of the genre. By the time Martina arrived in Nashville, George had already become a household name. His smooth baritone voice, his clean cowboy image, and his consistent string of hits earned him the title King of Country. While other artists bent to industry shifts, George never strayed far from his formula: simple storytelling, traditional melodies, and authenticity. Fans trusted him because he never pretended to be anything other than who he was. By the time he announced his farewell, the Cowboy Rides Away tour, George Strait had amassed 60 #1 singles, more than any artist in history, and sold over 100 million records worldwide. His career wasn't just impressive, it was untouchable. The tour wasn't just another run of concerts, it was a farewell to an era, a chance for fans to say goodbye to a man whose music had carried them through weddings, heartbreaks, and everyday life. Each stop on the tour became more than a performance. It was a cultural event, a pilgrimage for fans who grew up with George's voice as the soundtrack of their lives. Tickets sold out in minutes, stadiums filled with tens of thousands, and every audience member knew they were part of history. For Martina, being invited to join George on this journey was both an honor and a challenge. Sharing the stage with the king meant stepping into a spotlight brighter than most artists would ever experience, yet it also meant being part of something larger than herself. This wasn't just a tour, it was the closing chapter of one of country music's greatest stories. George Strait stood as a figure of consistency in a world that often changed too fast. To the fans, he represented stability, tradition, and an unshakable love for the music. And as Martina prepared to step onto that stage beside him, she wasn't just preparing for another gig. She was preparing to witness and participate in the end of an era, one that would forever tie her story to his. When George Strait announced his final tour, The Cowboy Rides Away, the country music world knew it was witnessing something historic. This was not just another concert series, it was the farewell of the king, a man who had defined the sound of the genre for more than 3 decades. Fans flocked from every corner of the country, some traveling thousands of miles, determined to be part of what would become a once-in-a-lifetime event. Each show carried an energy that words could barely capture, an arena filled with nostalgia, joy, and bittersweet goodbyes. Martina McBride was chosen as one of the special guests to join George on this farewell journey, a decision that instantly elevated the tour's emotional weight. For Martina, it was both an honor and a defining moment in her career. She already had a legacy of her own, celebrated for her powerhouse vocals and emotional ballads, but touring with George gave her something different, a chance to stand alongside a legend at the exact moment he was closing the book on his live career. The shows were not only about music, but about legacy. Fans sang along to every word of George's classics, from Amarillo by Morning to Check Yes or No, and Martina's own performances provided balance, power, and beauty that perfectly complemented his. Audiences were treated to more than individual sets. They witnessed 2 icons weaving together a shared story on stage. Behind the scenes, Martina felt the weight of the moment. She spoke in interviews about the deep respect she carried for George, noting that every detail of his shows was carefully considered. From the way he greeted fans to the way he closed a song, George's dedication was meticulous, yet effortless. Watching him work reinforced her belief that longevity in music was not just about talent, but about discipline, humility, and the ability to never lose sight of the audience. For the fans, Martina's presence gave the tour an added layer of richness. Her voice soared through stadiums, her ballads offering a moment of reflection before George would return with another timeless anthem. Audiences described her as more than just an opener. She was a co-star in a historic farewell, someone whose talent matched the gravitas of the event. Social media buzzed with clips of their joint performances and behind-the-scenes photos, spreading the magic beyond the arenas themselves. For Martina, The Cowboy Rides Away was more than an opportunity. It was a personal milestone. She wasn't just participating in a farewell tour, she was stepping into history, forever linking her story with the King of Country at the very moment he took his final bow. Among the countless unforgettable moments of George Strait's Cowboy Rides Away tour, none captured the magic of collaboration quite like the night Martina McBride joined him for a fiery rendition of the country classic Jackson. Originally written by Billy Ed Wheeler and Jerry Lieber in 1963 and made famous by Johnny Cash and June Carter, the song carried a playful, feisty energy that required 2 strong personalities to bring it to life. Martina and George were exactly that. On stage, Martina's soaring soprano and George's smooth baritone intertwined seamlessly, giving the audience not just a cover, but a reinvention, The chemistry was immediate and undeniable. As George delivered the steady lines of the husband ready to leave for Jackson, Martina shot back with sharp wit and vocal fire, embodying the frustrated wife. The playful banter written into the lyrics came alive between them, their voices sparking off one another like flint and steel. It wasn't just a duet, it was theater, storytelling, and country history reborn. The performance at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, became one of the defining highlights of the entire tour. Tens of thousands of fans roared as the two icons traded lines, their voices blending in ways that surprised even seasoned critics. Clips of the moment spread quickly across social media, with fans calling it one of the greatest live country duets of the decade. What made it so powerful wasn't just the vocal pairing, it was the sense of authenticity. George, ever the stoic cowboy, leaned into the humor of the song with a rare looseness, while Martina matched him with her bold, expressive delivery. Together, they struck a balance between tradition and freshness, honoring the legacy of Cash and Carter while making the song entirely their own. Critics praised the duet as one of the tour's standout moments, highlighting how Martina's energy revitalized the performance and how George's steady presence grounded it. Fans described the moment as electric, saying the atmosphere in the stadium shifted, that for those few minutes it felt as though the entire audience was part of something larger than themselves. Beyond the applause, the duet carried symbolic weight. It was more than a crowd pleaser. It represented a bridge between eras, between the king of country and one of its most powerful female voices. For Martina, it was proof that she could stand toe-to-toe with George Strait, not as an opener, not as a guest, but as an equal. For George, it was a moment that showed his respect for Martina as an artist capable of sharing his spotlight. In the history of his farewell, Jackson became more than a song. It became a statement, a reminder that even as one era was closing, the music would continue to evolve through collaborations that kept the spirit of country alive. While the world saw Martina McBride and George Strait sharing stages and delivering unforgettable duets, Martina's most lasting memories of the Cowboy Rides Away tour were the quiet ones. The moments that happened when the lights dimmed and the crowd's roar faded into silence. She often spoke about how George's professionalism struck her more than anything. Despite his legendary status, he approached rehearsals with the same care and humility as a new artist trying to prove himself. Martina recalls one particular late-night sound check where George, instead of retreating to his dressing room, stayed behind to help younger crew members adjust their equipment. He was patient, kind, and fully engaged, teaching without ever making it feel like a lesson. Watching this, Martina realized that his greatness wasn't just built on his voice or his catalog of hits. It was built on how he treated the people around him. For her, it was a revelation. In George, she saw a model of leadership that didn't rely on ego, but on consistency, respect, and integrity. Martina has said that working alongside him changed the way she thought about her own career. It wasn't just about standing center stage and belting out a song. It was about carrying yourself with grace when no one was watching. The more time she spent with George, the more she noticed these small moments. Jokes shared backstage before stepping out to perform, calm conversations about songwriting, even his unshakable calm when things went wrong. There were nights when technical issues threatened to derail a performance, yet George never raised his voice or lost his composure. Instead, he'd smile, reassure the crew, and carry on as if nothing had happened. To Martina, those glimpses behind the curtain revealed the true heart of the king of country, a man whose humility matched his fame. These experiences didn't just leave her with admiration, they pushed her to grow. She began experimenting more with harmonies and stage presence, inspired by George's trust and openness in collaboration. She learned that authenticity was not only about singing truthfully, but living truthfully. Every lesson, every shared laugh, every quiet moment became part of her personal and professional evolution. Looking back, Martina said that standing next to George on that tour gave her more than a career milestone. It gave her a set of values to carry forward: patience, kindness, and the understanding that true artistry is as much about character as it is about talent. What began as a professional collaboration on George Strait's Cowboy Rides Away tour soon blossomed into something deeper for Martina McBride. A friendship rooted in respect, trust, and shared values that endured long after the stage lights faded. In an industry where relationships are often fleeting and transactional, Martina found in George a kindred spirit, someone who understood not only the demands of the business, but the weight of carrying a legacy. Their connection wasn't built on grand gestures, but on consistency. Martina often described how easy it was to be around George, how conversations flowed naturally, whether they were discussing music, family, or the challenges of maintaining authenticity in a world constantly pushing for reinvention. Their bond became visible in public appearances after the tour, whether at award shows, charity galas, or special performances. Fans noticed the warmth in their interactions, the way they laughed together, the ease with which they shared a stage even outside the formal tour setting. It wasn't the forced chemistry of two stars performing for cameras, it was the genuine comfort of friends who respected each other's artistry and character. George, known for his reserved nature, rarely offered personal endorsements, yet he openly praised Martina, calling her one of the finest voices in country music. Likewise, Martina never missed an opportunity to highlight George's humility and steadiness, qualities she considered rare in artists of his stature. Their friendship extended to personal support as well. George was present to celebrate Martina's milestones, and she in turn supported his charitable efforts and special projects. Behind closed doors, Martina said she could always count on George's advice, not as a mentor speaking down, but as a peer who understood the pressures she faced. It was a bond that reassured her that real friendships could exist in an industry often clouded by competition and egos. Even years after the Cowboy Rides Away tour ended, their friendship endured. A reminder that while music may bring artists together, it is respect and authenticity that keep them connected. For Martina, the trust she built with George wasn't just a footnote in her career, it was one of the most meaningful partnerships of her life, proving that true legends don't just leave behind songs, they leave behind lasting human connections. At 60 years old, Martina McBride finds herself in a rare moment of reflection, looking back not just at a career that took her from the wheat fields of Sharon, Kansas, to the biggest stages in country music, but also at the relationships and experiences that defined her journey. More than awards, chart success, or accolades, Martina speaks now about gratitude, resilience, and the lessons learned along the way. She remembers the small-town girl who sang with her father's band, the young woman who struggled to find a foothold in Nashville, the wife who leaned on her husband's steady support, and the artist who found herself standing shoulder to shoulder with George Strait as he took his final bow. Each chapter shaped her not just as a performer, but as a person. Martina often says that music was never about fame for her, it was about connection. From the beginning, she believed that songs carried the power to heal, to comfort, and to empower, and that belief guided every performance she gave. At 60, she understands more deeply than ever that her voice was a vessel, not just for her own stories, but for the experiences of her fans. Yet when she speaks of George Strait, her tone changes, almost softens. Martina acknowledges that sharing the stage with him altered the trajectory of her artistry. Watching his discipline, his humility, and his unshakable respect for the audience gave her a blueprint for longevity. She admits that his example inspired her to think less about chasing trends and more about building a body of work that could stand the test of time. Their collaboration became one of the cornerstones of her career, not because of the spotlight it brought, but because of the friendship it forged. In a business where alliances are often shallow, Martina found in George a steady presence, a reminder that true artistry comes with grace and respect. Now, looking forward, Martina still sees possibility. She envisions recording new music, mentoring young artists, and advocating for women's voices in country music, roles she embraces with the same passion she brought to her earliest performances. She has no intention of fading quietly, instead choosing to use her platform to inspire others the way she was once inspired. But her reflection also carries a quiet revelation, one that has fans buzzing. For years, she rarely spoke in depth about her bond with George Strait, perhaps out of respect for his privacy, perhaps because some connections defy explanation. Yet now, Martina hints that what they shared was more profound than the public ever saw. A connection rooted in shared values, unspoken trust, and a deep understanding of what it means to dedicate a life to music. Fans interpret her words in many ways. Some see it as an admission of a friendship deeper than anyone realized. Others as a suggestion of a secret that might one day be revealed. Whatever the truth, Martina's reflections at 60 remind us that the greatest legacies are not only written in songs or chart records, but in the human bonds that endure long after the final note fades. As she looks back, Martina acknowledges that every challenge, every triumph, every collaboration was part of a tapestry that made her who she is. And as she looks forward, she carries the lessons of George Strait, of family, of faith, and of resilience with her. Perhaps her most telling words came in a recent reflection when she said, "Every note, every collaboration, every challenge has been part of a journey I am profoundly grateful for." And as fans listen, they can't help but wonder, could Martina's revelation about George Strait finally change everything we thought we knew about the King of Country?